Have you ever had that feeling? You know the one, where the most exciting, electric, can't eat, can't sleep passion just fizzles out. Where the person who felt like this incredible, thrilling puzzle suddenly starts to feel, well, solved? Today, we're diving deep into something a lot of us have felt, but maybe haven't put a name to, the curse of knowing. We're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most painful and honestly most universal paradoxes of love.
Right. We've all heard this a million times. It's one of those sayings that sounds kind of cynical, something your grumpy uncle would say. But it sticks around for a reason, doesn't it? Because it points to something really fundamental. Not just a flaw in our relationships, but a glitch in the very wiring of our brains, in how we see the world, and especially how we see each other.
So what's really going on here? Is it just inevitable? Does every fire just burn out? Is it simple boredom? Or, and this is what we're exploring today, is there something way deeper, something much more complex, happening just under the surface? That's the big question we're going to try and unravel. All right, so to understand why things might end, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. And the beginning of pretty much every great romance, well, it isn't really built on true connection. It's built on seduction. And I don't just mean physically. I mean the seduction of the mind.
Just think about it for a second. In those early stages, everything is charged with meaning precisely because you don't know. Every text message you're waiting for is this huge drama. Every silence is an empty. It's this space you can fill with your own poetry, your own ideas about how deep and thoughtful they are. The less you know for sure, the more spectacular the masterpiece your imagination gets to paint.
Now, this isn't just you being a hopeless romantic. There's actually a powerful psychological engine running this whole show. It's called the halo effect. Here's how it works. Your brain gets a few good signals, like they're funny or they have a great smile, and instead of waiting for more information, it just takes a massive shortcut. It decides, well, if they're great at this, they must be great at everything. It fills in all the blanks with perfection, basically creating a flawless movie character based on a 2-line script.
So let's be brutally honest for a second. That intense, heart-pounding feeling we call falling in love, a lot of the time, it's not actually about true intimacy with another person. It's an attachment to our own creation. It's a beautiful, shimmering illusion that can, by its very definition, only survive as long as we remain kind of ignorant of the full picture.
But here's the thing about illusions. They can't survive in the bright light of day. Reality always comes knocking. And this brings us to the second and much more painful part of this journey, the inevitable collapse. This is the moment where our perfect fantasy crashes head-on into the messy, complicated facts.
And suddenly, everything shifts. That mysterious silence that you thought was so deep and profound, now it just feels like an empty, awkward void. Those endearing quirks that were so cute at first, yeah, now they're just flat-out irritating habits. And the person who seemed to represent this entire universe of infinite possibility, well, now they just seem ordinary. The magical mask gets stripped away and you're left with just a person.
This is exactly why the end of the so-called honeymoon phase feels so gut-wrenching. It honestly feels like love itself is dying. But what's really happening is the death of our projection. Our fantasy is what's collapsing. The grief we're feeling isn't necessarily for the real person standing in front of us, but for the perfect person we invented in our own heads. The philosopher Alain de Botton absolutely nailed this. He basically said that we choose to be blind when we fall in love. We let our hopes for what a person could be just completely run over our knowledge of who they actually are. We're not falling in love with reality. We are falling in love with potential. And hey, if psychology wasn't enough of a hurdle, our own brain biology gets in on the action too. There's this concept called the hedonic treadmill. Think of it like a treadmill for your happiness. You get something new and amazing, a new partner, a new job, a new car, and you get this incredible rush. But you keep running, and eventually you end up right back at your baseline level of happiness. It's just how we're built. Novelty gives us a huge dopamine hit, but familiarity, well, it numbs the very same response. To put it really simply, our brains are junkies. They're addicted to novelty. They are constantly chasing that next high from something new and unfamiliar. This is precisely why a total stranger can seem so dazzling and full of possibility, while the partner you've known for years can feel predictable. It's not that they've gotten less interesting. It's that your brain has simply stopped giving you the chemical reward for paying attention. Okay, I know. This all sounds incredibly bleak, doesn't it? If our brains are hardwired to chase novelty, and our initial attraction is basically a fantasy we tell ourselves, are we all just doomed?
Are we just stuck in this endless cycle of excitement and disappointment? Is real, lasting love even possible?
But wait, this is exactly where the story pivots. Because the end of the fantasy is not the end of love. In fact, it's the only place where real love can have a chance to begin. And it requires something most of us aren't prepared for. It requires the courage to see. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of it all. That thrilling, effortless, head over heels feeling at the beginning, that's romance. It's easy. It's fun. But choosing to love someone after the illusion has shattered, after you've seen their flaws, their insecurities, their really annoying habits, that isn't romance anymore. That's something far more rare and far more powerful. That is courage.
The brilliant psychologist Carl Jung had a name for all the messy, imperfect parts of us that we try to hide away. He called it the shadow, and he argued that you can't have true intimacy, real connection, until you're willing to look at your partner's shadow, and, just as important, until you're willing to look at your own. Often, the very things that drive you crazy about them are pointing to something you refuse to face in yourself. So here's a challenge. The next time you feel that wave of boredom or contempt for your partner's predictability, just pause for 1 second and ask yourself, is this really about them? Or is this about my own restlessness, my own fear of the ordinary? Is it maybe about my own deep discomfort with the fact that nobody, including me, is perfect? When you start to move away from this need for perfection, you can discover a much healthier and, frankly, more beautiful model of love. The poet Rilke described it perfectly. He said true love isn't about two people melting together and becoming one. It's about two solitudes, two whole, complete, separate people who stand next to each other, strong enough to protect and honor and greet each other's individuality. And when you look at it this way, when you see that choosing to stay, choosing to find new depths in the familiar, well, that's not just a personal decision. In our modern world, it's actually a quiet, profound act of rebellion. I mean, think about it. Our entire consumer culture trains us to constantly look for the next new thing. We swipe, we replace, we upgrade. Our phones, our cars, and increasingly our people. But lasting love, it runs on a completely different operating system. It's not a product you consume. It's a practice. It takes discipline. It is rebellion against the constant, nagging tyranny of the new. So what does this rebellion actually look like day to day? Well, it's pretty simple, but it's not easy. First, you have to defy your own illusions. You have to actively separate the real person from the fantasy you built. Second, you have to learn to just sit with the ordinary, to be okay when things are just normal, without panicking. And third, you have to do the work of finding new depth, new nuance, new mystery in the very person you thought you had all figured out. So let's just be crystal clear about this. The end of the honeymoon phase is not the end of love. It is the prerequisite for love. It is the gate you have to walk through. It's the exact moment where the fantasy stops and the real work and the real love can finally begin. And this forces us to ask some really tough, uncomfortable questions. To look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, did I lose respect for them once I got to know them? Because if the answer is yes, then maybe you never actually respected them at all. Maybe you just respected the mystery. You respected the blank canvas. You respected the beautiful fantasy you painted on their silence. And really, that's the question I want to leave you with. It's the one that sits at the center of all of this. Do you love the person, or do you love your fantasy of them? It is not an easy question to answer honestly. But just sitting with it, just daring to ask it, that might be the most important first step you can take toward a love that's less about fantasy and a whole lot more about a courageous, rebellious, and deeply rewarding reality.